Reading and understanding PSAT score reports. So for the families that were unable to make our meeting, I wanted to just give an overview of what I covered in the meetings that we've had over the last week and a half. As we get started, I just wanted to go over what the PSAT 8-9 and the PSAT NMSQT actually cover. One of the things, as SAT has redesigned itself over this past year, they've really tried to seamlessly put together the PSAT 8-9, the PSAT NMSQT, as well as the SAT, where it will cover exactly the same. The scoring is going to be very similar. A few major changes that they made is there's no longer a separate critical reading and writing section. That has been combined to an evidence-based reading and writing section. You still have the math section with that. They have also embedded various questions when it comes to being able to actually give you a score for a science and history. Again, those were based on embedded questions within the whole test, so there wasn't a specific section for those. Another major change is there's now no guessing penalty for the PSAT. So that just gives you kind of an overview. They are very similar from test to test. As you look at the printed out copy of your PSAT scores, the thing I want you to notice on the very front cover is the access code. We'll talk a lot more about the access code, but that is going to be the code that you can use to find your students' score reports online. As we are looking at the scores, I want to make sure I remind everybody of when we actually took these tests. The tests were actually taken at the beginning of October. So as you are looking at, say, a math score or a reading score, realize that what class they currently are in, and they were only in school for about a month prior to taking this particular test. So just keep that in mind as you're reading and interpreting your scores. As we open up our tests, what you're going to find for the scores is there's three numbers. The one on the left is your evidence-based reading and writing score, and the one on the far right is your math score. The one in the middle is your total score. That total score obviously combines the reading and writing score as well as the math score. Also on this page and on this slide, I want to point out the red, yellow, and green line right underneath those scores. These will indicate whether a student is considered college ready based on certain benchmarks. As you're looking at that, if you'll notice the one for the writing and reading line, the green is much bigger because the benchmark set nationally for a student to be college ready for the reading and writing is a lower benchmark or a lower standard than it is for the math score. The math score is set almost 100 points higher than the writing and reading section for that to be considered college ready. So you want to kind of see where they are. This screen will show us where they need to strengthen their skills would be the red, approaching the scores as the yellow, and exceeding or meeting would be in the green. What we want to see, and one of the benefits as we look at some of the other scores and looking at it from year to year, we obviously want to see that where your student is, that they would be progressing along that line. And if they're currently in yellow, that next year that we would see them in green. If they're currently in red, that they'd be either at yellow or green the following year. The other number that we see here, you'll see it circled, is a percentile. Now a percentile is different than a percentages. Percentage would say I got 3 out of 10 correct, and so I got a 30%. A percentile is a comparison when you're looking at these. And so the example that we have on the screen here is that this student scored a 20th percentile in evidence-based reading and writing. So what that would mean is that if we lined up 100 kids, 100th being the person who scored the best. So the larger the number, the better the score. The student that scored the best is at 100, and the person that scored the worst would be at 1. So this particular student is at 20th, meaning that there's 80 people that had scored better than they had, and only 19 people that had scored the worst. Those percentiles for these scores are nationally set and a national comparison of all the students that took the PSAT this past October. One of the ways, especially if there's an area or a test score where you're like, gosh, I wish that they had scored higher, I would have thought they would have scored higher. One of the ways that we can look and analyze these scores is looking at the subscores, which is what's showing on this screen, which is located on the bottom left of the inside cover. And what it's going to do is break down each of the tests given, so the reading, writing tests, as well as the math test, into particular subscores. So there might be a particular area or a particular subscore area that is the lower end, and that might be the area that you would focus on to try to help improve your scores. On the bottom left there, you're going to see those cross-test scores. Those are the scores that I indicated prior for those embedded questions that would allow us to get at least a bit of a range on where they are in the science and history areas. The next slide we're going to look at is, what do we do with these scores now? And what you're going to find is there's going to be a whole section that's going to point out what are your students' strengths, as well as how can you help improve. And so you'll find that located when you open it up on the right side towards the bottom. You're going to see that those colors match the colors that we talked about before when we were talking about red, yellow, and green. And on the left side of that area, that's where it's going to show your students' strengths and what they're doing well. And then on the right side, what are some particular content areas that they might want to work on to help improve their scores. For those students who took the 10-11 version of the PSAT, it will also give you kind of an idea of where they are with their National Merit standing. So National Merit is a national program that recognizes the top 1% of test takers. So basically that 99th percentile of students who tested. And it is based on the 11th grade PSAT. So that's why you'll see after it'll say PSAT NMSQT score, because it's talking about the National Merit Qualifying Test score. Basically what you need to know, if your student is in the 87th percentile or higher as a 10th grader, then you want to maybe consider doing some extra prep, because it is the 11th grade year that your National Merit portion would be the most important. Why is it important? It's scholarship money and opens up a lot more opportunities for them. One of the really cool portions about the redesigned PSAT is they now have so much more online and connecting that. And so this screen is just showing you where would you go to enter in that access code. Again, the access code can be found on the very front cover, as well. It's also been emailed to you. And you would basically create an account and enter in that access code to be able to see the scores and access some of the other tools that are online that are connected directly with your students. As you were trying to access those scores online, a few things I do want to point out is this is the first year that PSAT has offered the scores in the way they are online. With that has come with a few little pitfalls with it being a new program. And so some of that is, if you've tried to enter in some of your scores, I would ask you to be patient. Some students have had to try to enter it in, and we've entered it in, and we've entered it in, and it wasn't until about the third or fourth time it kicked in, or they left it, came back an hour or two, and then the scores were there. The other part that I would say is that at times, if your student did not bubble in their name correctly, and you have set up your College Board account according to what you actually named them, versus maybe how they bubbled it, it won't connect those. And so I, as the academic advisor here at SCA, cannot make those changes through College Board for you. You will have to contact College Board directly to make those changes. What you're going to see is when you are able to log in online, you're going to see a lot of the same material that you're getting with the hard copy of the scores. So what we're seeing here is it's showing kind of that range or that predictive part of what score might they get on the SAT. So similar scores and similar information that you got on the previous. Again, as you see here, this is a similar information that we were looking at just a little bit ago. You know, what are they doing well? How can they improve? And it breaks it down in for the reading, writing, language, and math. This section of the online is what I think really makes it worth your time to be able to log in and access your scores online. So on the back side of your hard copy of your scores, you're actually going to see question by question, what questions did your student get right, wrong, and what were the correct answers, whether they were an easy question, medium question, or hard question. You're going to get that same information online, but it makes it interactive. So you can actually click on that question. It's going to tell you what the question was and give you an explanation of what the correct answer was and why it was the correct answer. So it's a really great way for your student to go back, review over what they did right, what they did wrong, and maybe kind of figure out, is it a content issue? Did they just rush through a question? What was it that maybe caused them to miss that question? The other thing, as you are looking at those scores and what questions they got right or wrong, I would really encourage you to look for patterns, maybe in a particular area, or maybe they just had test fatigue. Maybe they just struggled in one particular area or got off. And so then that kind of can help you see, is there certain parts to how they're approaching the test that might affect their test scores. Another new exciting piece to the redesigned SAT is the partnership with Khan Academy. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Khan Academy is a video-based online free resource for students to get extra tutoring. So for example, if a student's struggling with how to balance equations, they could actually go in there and say, how do I balance equations? And it's going to give them a video-based reteaching of that particular concept. When SAT College Board decided to redesign, they partnered with Khan Academy to offer a free prep course for SAT. So the PSAT scores actually will link in with that and actually customize what kind of prep that Khan Academy would offer your particular student based on their strengths and their weaknesses. The process to link your two accounts is pretty straightforward. They're going to walk you through it, but one, you just have to have a College Board account. You have to create a Khan account, and then you will link them and basically give them permission to be able to communicate with one account to the next. In closing, just wanted to run over and reiterate a few things. One, as you're trying to access the online system, please be patient. This is a brand new system for SAT, and I'm not for sure that they were really prepared for as many people as wanted to try to log in. So their system has ran a little slow, and there does seem to be some lag time. So I know for several other kids that when they would try to access it, it would say there were no scores available. We would try it again, still no scores. Tried about an hour or two later, and the scores were there. So be patient. The other error that we have seen is that if a student didn't bubble in their name correctly and the name doesn't exactly match the College Board account that you created for them, it will not link the two. Unfortunately, that is not an error that I can correct on my end. That is something, because it's your private information, you will have to contact College Board directly. And I've given you the phone number here on this slide to be able to call them. It won't be probably a quick 5-minute phone call. There will be some hold time there, but once you do get to them, they're extremely friendly and more than willing to help. The last thing that I wanted to point out is, how do we help prepare our students for the PSAT and the SAT and ACT here at SCA. One, our teachers are very good about implementing and covering a lot of content that are on those. I know that our math teachers pretty traditionally, and I know even this year even more so, are doing SAT type of problems regularly in their classrooms. Our English department does a very nice job of implementing and integrating the vocabulary that they're going to need for SAT. The last thing that I'm excited to talk about is with our new program, Naviance. If you haven't heard it, but we're getting ready to kick off a new college and career program that is online based. It's going to be a great program, and one piece to that is something called Prep Me, and that will be a free resource to you as families that your student would have access to both SAT and ACT prep through the Naviance program, where they'll have test banks and such that they can work on it. So we're always here to partner with you guys. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to email me, and I am more than happy to answer whatever needs to be answered.